I think we have 5 so far, so I believe we do have a quorum.
Thanks, Adam. I really appreciate that. Excellent. So we'll go ahead and get the meeting started today with approval of the January 2024 meeting votes. That's to include the proposed State Housing Board bylaws, proposed changes that were discussed in January. If I could please get a motion from a board member of approval for that.
I move to approve the January 2024 meeting votes. This is LaDawn.
I second it, Anthea. This is Ryan Moses.
Thank you, Ryan, for the second. All those in favor signify by aye or a hand raised.
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, thank you all. Next on the agenda are the director's comments and the budget update. I'll turn it over to, I believe, to Allison George for that. Allison, are you on? Or are you on mute?
I do not see Allison on. So let's proceed to Sam, and then we can come back to Allison after the regulatory portion of the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. We'll skip forward then. So public hearing, administrative rules for factory built structures. Sam Albert, if you can lead us there, please.
Welcome, everybody. This is Sam Albrecht. I'm the director of the Office of Regulatory Oversight. We are here today to look at adding one administrative rule into our factory built structure administrative rules. This is Rule 2.1513. This was the rule that the State Housing Board approved as an emergency rule, and we are now looking at making it permanent. Chair Martin, I believe you have a script for this. At some point, we'll get you ready to queue up for that, but I just want to give a little background. So this is a rule that allows factory-built manufacturers to produce products in case of a local emergency, and when declared by the local government that there is a declaration of a state of emergency. This is a little different than the rule we approved on previously in the emergency rule after input from other staff and the Technical Advisory Committee. We took out the declaration by the of a governor's state of emergency. This is a local rule and driven by local state of emergencies only. So in your packet and made available to the public was the attachment 1, which is the actual rule we are looking at today for the wording to be approved into our administrative rules 8 CCR 1302-14. And at this point, if there's no other procedural questions, Chair Martin, you can go ahead and start on the public hearing. I will help identify people that I know that want to give testimony. If anybody is on this call to provide public testimony, please put your name in the chat, or please notify me in the chat on this. And Chair Martin and I will call on those people to give 3 minutes of testimony.
Okay, I appreciate that, Sam. You could all bear with me as I read through this script here. The State Housing Board is now in session for a rulemaking hearing pursuant to sections 24-4-103 and 24-32-7021G of the Colorado Revised Statutes. I am Anthea Martin, board chair for this hearing. In addition to the other board members participating are the director for the Office of Regulatory Oversight, Sam Albrecht, and the divisions and board's general counsel, Mike Kotalarski, senior assistant attorney general. We're holding this rulemaking hearing to adopt the proposed amendment to the administrative rules recommended through the Technical Advisory Committee, TAC. The Division of Housing convened TAC meetings with stakeholder participation on November 14, 2023 and December 12, 2023. The notice regarding this hearing and asking for public comment on the draft rule was also emailed to over 900 interested parties on December 6, 2023 and January 31st, 2024. All TAC meetings were held virtually and public notice was provided on the State Housing Board webpage. The board will consider the draft rule attached to the rulemaking notice for today's hearing and any written and oral comments entered as part of today's hearing. No written comments or testimony were provided by the deadline. The proposed regulations were filed electronically with the Secretary of State on December 29, 2023 for review and publication in the January 10, 2024 issue of the Colorado Register in compliance with statutory requirements. Further, the proposed regulations that were noticed with the Secretary of State were also filed electronically with the Colorado Office of Policy, Research, and Regulatory Reform on December 29 and emailed to interested stakeholders as a DORA regulatory notice December 29, 2023. The Colorado Office of Policy, Research, and Regulatory Reform determined on January 19, 2024, that a cost-benefit analysis was not required for the submission since no public requests were received by its deadline. Additionally, pursuant to Section 24-4-1033B CRS, every individual requesting notification of proposed rulemaking was emailed a copy of the notice of rulemaking on November 14, 2023, and updated on January 31, 2024. The proposed regulations and the notice of rulemaking were also posted on the website of the Building Codes and Standards section on November 14, 2023, and updated on January 31, 2024. Each of these notices included a copy of the proposed rules, the basis, the purpose, and authority, and instructions on how to provide written or verbal testimony to be included in the rulemaking hearing record. Copies of the proposed rules as noticed and as further amended, as well as the statement of basis, specific statutory authority, and purpose are available upon request. As part of the board's early stakeholder engagement process, comments in relation to the draft rule were requested by 5 p.m. on January 31st, 2024. There were no written comments received by this deadline. Additional comments submitted after this deadline and prior to the close of the public comment hearing will be received and are considered part of the record. There were no written comments between the January 31st deadline and today's hearing. A technical advisory committee meeting was noticed and held on November 14, 2023 and December 12, 2023 to discuss and recommend this rule be added. Both the website posting and the email was accomplished on December 6, 2023 and updated on January 31st, 2024. Are there any other written comments that anyone would like submitted and considered part of the record for this rulemaking hearing? If so, please email a copy to Sam Albrecht at sam.albrecht@state.co.us, who will have them marked as part of the record. The purpose of this hearing is to allow interested parties the opportunity to present comments, data, views, testimony, and arguments concerning the rules as proposed. The public is invited to testify at this hearing. Please remember, we are only considering the addition of one rule as was filed and published as an amendment to the approved administrative rules for factory-built structures. All comments are going to be limited to 3 minutes, and I request that redundancy be kept to a minimum. Each individual offering testimony at this rulemaking hearing must be on the record. Therefore, any person who wishes to speak at this hearing must record their name, their address, and the organization represented, if any. Today's hearing will be recorded, and I ask that people introduce themselves prior to testifying. I also ask that you speak loudly and clearly to ensure that your testimony is recorded. We will also accept any written submissions and make them part of the record. During deliberation, the board will consider all of the factors outlined in the Administrative Procedure Act. At this time, I'll call individuals to testify in the order they identify themselves as wishing to provide public testimony. Do we have anyone, Sam?
Thank you, Chair Martin. Your first witness is Dennis Schultz with Deputy Building Official, City and County of Denver.
Wonderful.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to comment on this particular ruling. It's been extremely important for the City and County of Denver that this rule was in place. And I'll just give you a quick background. Last summer, we got a new mayor, Mayor Mike Johnson. He declared a state of emergency and wanted to house 1,000 people experiencing homelessness by the end of the year. As you know, we have very complex building rules and construction rules. And what we did in the City and County of Denver, was we wrote a special set of rules dealing with tiny homes and tiny sleeping units several years ago. And what this rule allows us to do and allowed us to do with Sam's team was we could actually build and deploy hundreds of tiny homes in short order. And this really sped things up. It bypassed a lot of the required plan review minimum requirements and sped us on. And we did get over 100 are set today, and we have about another 100 total coming in the next 3 or 4 weeks. And without the state's help and without this administrative rule, this would never have happened, and we wouldn't have been able to house the 1,000 that we already did, and we're looking to actually house an additional 1,000 in this year. And I just, number one, want to thank the state and for having this emergency rule in place, and also I want to thank Dola's team that really helped us through the process. And we got these manufactured homes. And you guys, if you're in the Denver area, you see them down on Santa Fe. There's some downtown here, and we got some out on the east side as well. So there's 3 sites that we're deploying them to. And you are taking people who are unhoused and putting a shelter over them with this particular emergency rule. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Thank you for those comments and for that feedback.
Chair Martin, I do not see anybody else wanting to provide testimony. If there are any other attendees to this meeting that would like to provide testimony, please put your name and information in the chat or raise your hand at this point in time. Otherwise, we will move on. Chair Martin,
And I'd like to ask at this time as well, if there are any questions from any of the board members or staff. Nancy?
Thank you. Yeah, I think I agree with Mr. Dennis's, or is Dennis your first name? Sorry. Comments that it can be a really useful tool. I noticed it's in force for 180 days. If there is a change in building code for some reason, or maybe I misunderstood it because I admit I didn't read the whole thing. I just read the red line stuff. What happens after that? What happens after the 180 days? Are the changes allowed to remain, or does the builder, constructor, whoever have to demolish or change and bring into code what they've done?
Yeah, Nancy, I could address that. We have a tiny home section in our Denver building code that allows these temporary structures for up to 2 years without any utilities, and then up to 4 years with utilities. So the 180-day span is how many days the manufactured housing manufacturer has to actually build the units. We deploy them, and in this case, we've actually hooked utilities. So we will have them on site for up to 4 years. So it depends on the local jurisdiction and what they have in their particular laws.
Ms. Jackson, on the administrative and plan review side, Dennis is exactly right with respect to the local conditions and the amount of time they can stay. But if it's, we expect construction to be done within 120 days of the approval of the plans. If there needs to be an extension, there is the caveat to request those extensions. And as a perfect example, City and County of Denver has already requested that they be allowed to continue production past the original 120 days in order to finish those units. Once a set of plans is approved to our approved building codes, that continues until that construction is done. And then if there are any updated state codes, they can request 180-day change, 180-day extension on to build to the existing or the previous building codes.
Thank you. That helps. Thank you.
Sam, do you have a list of approved manufacturers, or is this available to any manufacturer to build a factory built structure?
Great question. Yes, we have a list of registered manufacturers, registered and certified manufacturers. For example, when city and county of Denver put this out to bid. They had a registered manufacturer ask for to be able to bid on it. But we have a list on the website that is available to any local community. And of course, we're in pretty good contact with any local governments if they want to call us and take a look at that list. But it is a public facing list on the Building Codes and Standards website for factory built non-residential manufacturers that are approved in our program in order to build through the state program.
That's
And
good to
I
know.
will just make one point of clarification on Dennis's testimony. While he said those were tiny homes, we classify them at the state. We have a different definition for a state certified tiny home. We put insignias on these units as emergency response units, so that they are, if they go someplace else after the 4 years that Dennis talked about, that anybody that gets those units knows exactly what it is.
Thanks for that, Sam. Looks like we have another question here from Nancy. Is that a new question?
Sorry about that. I forgot to take my hand down.
Thanks. Tim?
Yeah, hi, thank you. Sam, Dennis, everybody. My name's Tim Pate. I'm the building official with City and County of Broomfield. I also am a member of the TAC. But with the permanent rulemaking that's being discussed today, just to clarify, at least in my mind, and maybe for the board members that are going to be voting, it's my understanding, and Sam, if you can help me clarify this, is this is strictly going to be up to the local jurisdiction to make a request based on their own declared state of emergency. And if that's the case, we provide the details of what type of code, lessening of the code requirements we may be asking for. And then if we get those units built that way and brought into my jurisdiction, if we wanted to put a limitation of the time that they can be there, would that be part of that request? Or that's because that's now, you don't have that 180-day rule that the emergency does. Just for clarification, I'm sorry to have to ask that question more for my purposes, but maybe just for the whole group, it might be helpful. Thank you.
So Tim, that's a great question, and you're exactly right. So the way this is that the request has to come from the local government, and the request let's say, for example, that a local government declares a state of emergency, looks at our building codes, and everything in our building codes is perfect, then there would not need to be a modification of the existing building codes. The city and county of Denver has amended their building codes and approved building codes that are a little different, and they have this special unit called an RX unit, residential X, that is a blend of the IBC and International Building Code and International Residential Code. We met with the city and county of Denver multiple times and did a crosswalk of the two sets of building codes to make sure that we were not compromising life safety or any other risks in there that we were not in agreement of. And then we approved the construction drawings based on both our code set and their code set and those conversations. So part of that rule would require them to say exactly what parts of the code that they want us to review and approve. And if it is not significant risk, then we will do that. Does that make sense? And so, yes, 180 days would be up for you to determine how long they're there. Because we have them labeled as an emergency response unit. That does not mean that they can't be moved at some place in the future, but that's the way they are for this emergency rule.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's not emergency rule. This will now be a permanent rule, but it requires a locally declared state of emergency and a request letter from the local government for us to consider implementing this rule.
Yeah, thank you very much. That clarifies my question, at least for the board, just that there is not a time limitation unless the local jurisdiction decides to put one on. Otherwise, they could be there forever. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Tim. It appears that we do not have any further testimony. Bear with me. The comment and testimony portion of this rulemaking hearing is now closed. The board will review and consider the written and oral comments, data, views, testimony, and arguments that were submitted to the board prior to the conclusion of this hearing, in conjunction with the oral comments provided here today, before rendering a decision on the adoption of the proposed rules. After adoption, the rules will be forwarded to the Attorney General's office with a request for an opinion on the constitutionality and legality of the rules. On or before the 20th day following the adoptions and regulations, the rules and the opinion of the Attorney General will be filed with the Secretary of State for publication in the Code of Colorado Regulations. On or before the 20th day following the adoption of the rules will be followed with the Office of Legislative Legal Services as required by law. And the adopted rules become effective 20 days after publication of the adopted rules in the Colorado Register. Sam, can we call for a recess now, or?
Anthea, I don't see any reason to do that. There were no other significant questions or modification to the rule as it was proposed.
Okay.
So I think you can continue.
Okay, thank you. The board will now consider the testimony, the draft rules, and amendments, if any, as presented. Are there any final questions from the board? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the rules and amendments presented today?
I so move. Nancy Jackson.
Thank you, Nancy.
Second.
Monique.
Thank you, LaDon, for the second. Is there any further discussion? If I can ask for an approval, signified by aye or hand raise.
Aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you all. The administrative rules have been passed at this time. I close the rulemaking hearing at this time, and I thank you for your cooperation and patience.
State Housing Board, thank you so much for your time today. I sure do appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Allison, I see that you've joined us. If we can go back up on the agenda and leave some time here for director's comments and budget up.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthea. I appreciate the opportunity to join just a few minutes late and to observe the rulemaking hearing. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of that. I apologize for my tardiness. We are actively working on the the kickoff for the temporary rental assistance program. And so I was detained in a meeting for that. But the plan is kickoff will be on Thursday. We're very excited. We've been meeting on a weekly or a daily basis, internally to kick that off, working with our partners that have been selected. And just as a reminder, this is the $30 million through the special session for temporary rental assistance. And so that program will be kicked off on the 15th. We have 5 agencies that will be administering it on the Division of Housing's behalf. Those include CEDP, Total Concept, La Puente, Brothers Redevelopment, and Neighbor to Neighbor. Sorry, my 5th. So we will be doing something a little different this time around. We are doing a randomized selection process. And so it's really focused on trying to simplify the process for our local communities, for our individuals living throughout the state that have great need for emergency rental assistance. It's important to note that while we're standing up this program, that the federally funded emergency rental assistance program is still taking applications for folks that are in imminent risk of eviction, because our priority is making sure we can keep people housed. So you might be asking, what is a randomized selection? What that is we will have folks submit a short application on our website. Based on that short application, we will be doing a randomized selection based on the capacity of our partners. And those folks will be notified that they can move forward through the application process. If a person is not selected, they will be notified that they can reapply in the next month. And that is based on the capacity that we have with our nonprofit partners that will be administering the program. So we will be keeping you all up to date on how things are going. Very excited to get that launched. I also wanted to update you on Proposition 123. You all are reviewing some applications for our homeownership funding this month with Proposition 123. So that is exciting to see that continuing to move forward. The other aspect that I wanted to talk about is next year, next state fiscal year, that is, because we have started the planning for next year. As a reminder, we have homelessness funds and we have homeownership funds. The homelessness dollars, we actually had January 24th, we had a feedback forum. Over 100 people signed up for that, and that was all intended to provide feedback on the types of programs and needs people are seeing and need in their communities. And so we did a survey before the forum to help craft how that forum could be rolled out and then how we could receive information. We got 27 survey responses that were shared, not in total, but the concepts from those surveys were shared as a part of the feedback forum in January. We're taking that information, and that is how we're starting the process to develop our plan starting July 1st for the homelessness funds. We will be doing a stakeholder effort very similarly for the home ownership side of our house in March. We were really pleased with how that process went on the homelessness side, and so we'll be modeling the homeownership side after that stakeholder process that we went through on the homelessness side. So exciting things to come, but I'm very happy that you all are keeping the process going and reviewing these applications for funding this month as well. Any particular questions for me? Okay. If there are no questions, I will be excited to keep you all up to date on how the rollout of the new temporary rental assistance program goes. TRAG. Keep a lookout. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. I'd like to turn it over next to Andrew Paredes for the updated DOH gap funding guidelines, policies, and procedures.
Thanks, Anthea, and good afternoon, board members. We as DOH staff are excited to present 6 new items to you all that are updates to our gap funding policies, procedures, and guidelines. We have done this in the past kind of annually or every year and a half or so. These items are a direct result of the contract and process improvement period that we underwent in the fall of 2023. We worked on these diligently over those 2 months in the fall and finalized these recommendations in December of 2023. We posted these for public comment and feedback through our Engage DOLA site that was open for 2 weeks, and we got some great stakeholder feedback and response as of January 12th. Staff were able to incorporate the comments, feedback, suggestions from our stakeholders and use that and those in preparing these final guideline updates that we're here to present to you all today and seek any questions, comments, feedback, or advice from you prior to publishing these and having them go into effect with April 1 applications for DOH GAP funds. I think if it's okay, Anthea, I'd like to kind of tackle these one by one kind of in the order it appeared in your packet. So you all will see the first item, we are proposing to increase the DOH funding guidelines for our per unit subsidies. You can see that we're proposing to increase the subsidy from currently $40,000 a unit in metro areas to 50, from 50 to 55 in rural areas, and from 50,000 a unit to 60,000 a unit for permanent supportive housing projects. In addition, we are proposing to update our, what we call our cost containment or our cost thresholds, our per unit, project cost maximums or guidelines, our, per square foot, our hard cost, soft cost, and land cost inputs into housing projects. As costs have gone up over the last year and a half, we went back and took a look at all of the deals we've considered over that time period and use those to inform recommending increasing these kind of guideposts. These new guidelines per project funding, the total development cost, et cetera, will, looking back, 80% plus of the applications we've reviewed over the last year and a half would have fit under these new guidelines. So we are confident that the numbers that we are updating to will accommodate kind of our traditional, or the projects that we have looked at. So with that, I'll stop on this question and ask for any comments or feedback with regard to the per unit funding guidelines, as well as kind of our cost containment thresholds. I will also add that some of the stakeholder feedback we got on these are that rural projects and or home ownership and mobile home projects might need or ought to receive a higher per unit threshold. So very much in the spirit of Allison's update, that is absolutely something that is likely on the table for kind of our Prop 123 home ownership program rollout. And how we should deal with rural subsidies is something that we'll be asking our newly formed DOH Resource Advisory Committee to help us kind of research, go over, and advise future changes on. I think it's also interesting to note that 19% of our respondents weighed in that our PUPA or operating expense were still too low. So again, this was great feedback that we received and something we think that the new DOH Resource Advisory Group will be able to weigh in on and perhaps advise us on future changes to those thresholds. Hearing and seeing no comments or feedback on the first item, I'll move on to the second one, which are the DOH grant versus loan policy. So we've received a lot of feedback historically about how DOH goes about making a decision on a gap funding application of either a grant or a loan. And we have historically had guideposts by which we've done that internally, but that has been kind of an opaque process. And we're seeking really to formalize this and make it more transparent. So we are going to publish kind of our guidelines now, not just the guideposts by which we debated these things internally, but for the public to see how these decisions are made and what filters we're applying. So obviously transparency is the key objective here. First and foremost, it will remain the policy of DOH to provide gap funding awards in the form of loans to for-profit developers. For our nonprofit and housing authority partners, we will take a look at the requests and underwrite them, assuming that the debt a project is taking on will hit a 1.15 times debt coverage ratio, and that the PUPA or operating expense a project is proposing will fit and not exceed DOH's maximum. We will then kind of run those filters through our process, and if a project is able to sustain an award in the form of a cash flow loan, not a must pay, but a cash flow contingent loan, and be able to refinance that loan at the end of the compliance period, then we will make a recommendation for a loan. If it is not, we'll make a recommendation for a grant. So we're really just taking time here to put these down in writing and formalize for everybody the method by which we make these recommendations. And the key feedback we got from stakeholders on this item were that many of our stakeholders requested that DOH make its loan recommendations in the form of cash flow contingent loans. That means that a loan that the division makes only needs to be repaid kind of on an annual basis if the project generates positive cash flow, and that DOH not make loans in the form of kind of a traditional, there's an absolute payment that's due every year regardless of how the project performs. I think I am safe to say that we have made the vast majority, probably 95% plus of our gap funding awards as cash flow contingent loans and not what we call must pay or hard pay debt. So we continue and will continue to follow that practice when we're making these gap funding loan recommendations. It is worth noting, though, that there are a couple of funding sources that we have. Senate Bill 159, the THLF loans, or our CHIF, Colorado Housing Investment Fund loans, that do require that we make loans in the form of traditional hard pay debt. So we will continue to do that where statute requires that or where the funding source requires it. I think another popular piece of feedback that we got was 19% of our respondents pointed out that when projects achieve positive cash flow, that cash flow is often reinvested into the project to support that project or the organization's overall mission and services it provides to its residents, which we absolutely think is a positive. And that is why when we do make recommendations for cash flow loan, it is a split of that cash flow with the developer or the housing authority and nonprofit, and not the state asking for all of that cash flow to come back to retire debt. An advantage of our policy of making loans where loans are sustainable is that we have seen over the last few years the benefits of having cash flow loans and loans that were made 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 years ago. Those loans have been repaid, and they have helped us make more gap funding awards than simply our annual allocations would dictate. So where available, where we are able to, we plan to continue to make, using this filter, cash flow loans where the property supports it, because we do believe that money can get recycled back into future gap funding projects, again, 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years down the road. Questions from board members on that one? Seeing none, and when you do have questions, please feel free to ping in or use the raise hand function, and I will stop. But I'll keep going in the interest of time. The third item that we are implementing is a new application process. So we will be instituting a kind of pre-application process prior to an applicant submitting their formal or final application. So we are asking that applicants be in touch with their DOH housing development specialist in advance, sending a quick application or project questionnaire along with a letter of interest, along with a budget spreadsheet to their DOH Devo, we call them, at least 15 days in advance of submitting an application to allow for staff and the potential applicant to talk the project over in a pre-application phone call, hoping to kind of work some bugs out or make sure that everybody is on the same page, get a good idea for what funding source might be a good fit. Oftentimes, when we're looking at an application and we know we have a gap funding resource that would be a great fit, there are things that that applicant needs to do or consider even in advance of an application. So we're instituting this pre-application consultation as kind of a way to unearth some of those potential pitfalls or landmines before they happen, as well as really opening the dialogue between our DOH staff as well as the applicant in advance so that we can try to make sure that applicants are able to send us everything we need in order to review and underwrite these applications in as quick and efficient manner as possible, and then get a completed write-up and analysis in front of you all, the State Housing Board, again, in as quick and efficient a manner as we can. LaDawn.
So were the applicants receptive towards that? Because it sounds like it's adding an extra step in the process for them.
So I'd say that, you know, as far as the pre-application phone call and consultation, we generally got positive feedback to that. It mirrors the way a lot of other public funding agencies do business. So I don't think it is a huge step. In fact, most of the time, our staff and the applicant have been talking about this potential project kind of informally anyway. So we're kind of formalizing that step so that we can begin to build a file, have, you know, that letter of interest on file, be able to really talk through and look at numbers together. So there was not a lot of negative feedback with regard to that aspect. Something of note, though, we did get some applicants who expressed concern with our requirement that applicants be current on all of their other project compliance and monitoring prior to submitting a new application to the division. And so, you know, we took that feedback to heart and clarified what we mean by that in our in the guidelines that you all saw. We went ahead and clarified that our applicants should know that anytime our staff go out to review or monitor old projects and might find something that needs to be changed or updated or fixed, there's a 30-day kind of cure period already built in. So an applicant that is working with our staff got a notice that a couple of files were out of place, for example, and, you know, has that 30-day period to get things fixed, that won't be held against them, and they can continue to process new applications. You know, this simply refers to projects or applicants who might have long outstanding issues that we want to kind of get buttoned up so that we can move forward with a clean slate. Ryan?
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, no, hey, thanks, Andrew. So as I understand it, this 15-day front-loading process, if you will, I guess it allows you and your team the opportunity to conduct a QA, QC, quality assurance, quality control process, so that hopefully on the back end of it, it will create greater levels of efficiency and even further streamline the process and hopefully reduce the queue in terms of catching things up front as opposed on the back end. So it's an efficiency gain process. Is that correct? And if so, do your folks plan on taking an empirical type of approach and actually capturing from a quantified or quantitative perspective so that you can show the efficiencies gained based upon the implementation of this process?
Yep, you hit the nail right on the head, Ryan. I thank you for that. This is actually kind of like a pre-QA, if you will. This is really a formal, step that our staff and our applicant can have that upfront conversation. We might just happen to notice something, that the applicant filled out their spreadsheet with 2021 rents instead of 2023 rents, and it's just an early upfront say, hey, we see this, we're thinking this, we noticed a few things. We will also have a formal QA process, and I'll get to that on the next item after an official application comes in. But yes, Ryan, all of these things are done with an eye towards increasing DOH efficiency and getting applications turned around and funding recommendations out in a timely manner so that we can then get completed applications in front of you all quickly, and from there, get into the documentation process. Really oh, go ahead, sorry.
That's a fantastic good news story. So hopefully you good folks can tangibly show, citizens of basically their government in action for them and you can operationalize that process to show them something tangible there. So that's fantastic initiative on you and your team's part, Andrew.
Thank you. We've already begun to do that with showing results from our contracting process improvements for last summer and fall, and we've had some tangible results that we've been able to post. So I look forward to continuing, that analysis on our upfront application underwriting and award process. Anthea?
Thanks, Andrew. I just wanted to mention, or really add a comment for the State Housing Board members' benefit. Andrew and I were discussing yesterday specifically the request for stakeholder comments, and I was asking him where those are released, when we as State Housing Board members can take a look at that ahead of time. And that comes through in Allison George's newsletter. That's there's an email blast list for it. If you're not getting that, if you could send Andrew a note and just make sure that you're on that. I think it's really important that DOH sees specific comments from all those State Housing Board members when they're looking for feedback.
Yes, happy to share that. Thank you. So the next two items I want to kind of tackle in concert. So items number 4 and 5, the updated DOH gap funding application requirements, as well as the additional CDBG application requirements addendum. They really are getting to the same thing, that this is a new and I think a big threshold change on the part of DOH. We will be requiring a complete application up front with a lot of items that used to be kind of items that could follow. And we would begin to work on a file, but know that we need still items B, C, and D in order to finalize our analysis and get that in front of you all, the State Housing Board. And that, while it made sense in some regards, really did, create an inefficient process and an atmosphere where applications that we were working on could drag out for 2, 3, 4, 5 months sometimes, while we started to work on it, but still didn't have final numbers, and an applicant was working to get us those. That was fine. But what it did is it really dragged out the process, the timeline that our staff were working on files, and that became inefficient and kept staff from being able to more quickly and efficiently work on complete applications that were in file. So what we're really trying to do is drive that. We have an idea, here's, a potential application number, kind of conversations and pre-work into that before application phase, so that while we're doing all of that, we can wait for everything to be in file and then get an application into our Devo and underwriting teams, so that we can then quickly and efficiently turn them around in 30 to 45 days, get them in front of the State Housing Board. Therefore, our applicants, their investors, their lenders can really count on that turn time. And then from there, once we know that we've got an application going to the State Housing Board, we also know that everything is in that file, so that the next day or the next week, we can get that application handed off to our contracting team in order to really start that documentation process within 15 days, as is one of our wildly important goals and lead measures through the governor's office for this fiscal year. Further on down the line, in order to meet that 90-day turnaround for awards to completed contracts, in order to meet the governor's executive order from the end of 2023. So this really is a a filter that we're putting in place in order to allow us to be as efficient as possible, allow for transparency and reliability on the part of our applicants, can rely on DOH to get its projects done in a certain time frame in order to get our projects from start to finish as quickly as possible to meet the governor's executive order. So this will be a bit of a change for sure, but we feel like it will enable us to more quickly and efficiently get projects in and out of our queue. I'd say that, highlight one of the, probably the most common feedback we got from 13% of our respondents, but still it was more common than the rest, was that oftentimes those on tax credit deals, those partnership agreements aren't ready at the time an applicant needs to submit for their gap funding application. So we heard that and kind of changed that threshold to prior to State Housing Board. So we will be able to work on applications, without that final tax credit partnership or waterfall in place, but we won't be seeking your final approval or an award until those drafts are in place so that we can quickly and efficiently move it from award letter into the contracting process. And then another common piece of feedback we got from our applicants was the request that DOH continue to accept the applicant's budget spreadsheet, the CHAFA LIHTC budget spreadsheet, or the DOH format. And that has been our practice. We will continue to accept any of those items, although certainly it's more efficient when we get it on the DOH spreadsheet. We certainly understand that applicants are running in 5, 6, 7 directions at the same time. So if they send us the information in another format, we will be able to work with that kind of internally and put that into our own model or analysis tool. So we did make a change there as well, allowing for applicants to continue to use the CHAPA budget spreadsheet, for example. And then the last one was simply kind of us posting that we have already revised the DOH budget spreadsheet tool that we use to analyze deals. We posted a new and updated version in November. We asked applicants to take a look at that and for their feedback. The vast majority of feedback we got on that was positive, as well as applicants would like to still be able to submit us their CHAFA LIHTC budget spreadsheet, for example. And we clarified that that is still acceptable. DOH will use its tool on the back end, but we will certainly accept the CHAFA spreadsheet as kind of the input for our staff to do their analysis. So that is it for what was in your packet. Again, I'm happy to take any questions, advice or feedback that you all have in this forum, or if you think of something later and want to send in any questions or feedback to me, you're welcome to do that as well.
Andrew, do you need a formal vote on this?
No, we do not. This is internal policy, so not subject to the approval of the State Housing Board, though we certainly always want your advice, your feedback, and your counsel. So that's why we wanted to kind of go over this in this public meeting to get that from you. We will be posting these to our guidelines in the next few days. And again, they will take effect with our April 1st applications in order to give our applicant pool time to put these new items into practice.
Great. Well, thank you for walking us through all of these updates. Let's move on to the project application review stage. First up, I will need to recuse myself from Columbine Towers, but I will be introducing Demetra English.
Thank you, Anthea. With us today presenting Columbine Towers is Ahmed Abdel Hamid.
Thank you. Thanks, Demetra.
Good afternoon. Thanks for your time. My name is Ahmed. I am a vice president with Ulysses Development Group and would just like to share a few words on Columbine Towers. So as I'm sure you all know, the preservation of existing affordable housing units has become more and more difficult in this current environment. Affordable housing units are getting lost right now, being converted to market rate. Our project and our acquisition and financing of Columbine Towers presents the opportunity to preserve 149 units of existing Section 8 housing that is currently at risk of losing its affordability. Additionally, we also will be creating 21 new units of affordable housing in the city of Denver, and all of which will serve the elderly and disabled population, so a vulnerable population that truly needs the affordable housing. And so as you likely saw in the package, as part of our acquisition and financing, we'll be doing a large rehabilitation of the property as well. So we'll be doing major unit upgrades, replacing a lot of items in the kitchens, the bathrooms, the flooring. We'll be doing a number of amenity upgrades, some exterior upgrades as well, all of which we believe will greatly improve the residents' quality of life. The project has received strong support from the local level up to the federal level. This includes the receipt of our HUD approval for our RAD2 conversion. So that's the process by which we will be replacing the current Section 8 contract that is at risk of being terminated with a new 20-year Section 8 contract. It's a project-based rental assistance contract with HUD as the administrator. We received the approval from HUD for this on February 1st. Additionally, we have received a commitment of $10 million in funding from the city of Denver to undertake the acquisition and rehabilitation. Denver Housing Authority, DHA, has also provided their commitment to partner with us to qualify for the property tax and sales tax exemptions. And then lastly, we received commitments of funding from Bellwether and Impact Development Fund. So our financing is all secured at this point. We are currently on track to close on April 1st, which includes closing on the financing and the acquisition of the property. And we'll be starting construction immediately, sometime within a month. And then that construction process will take a year to a year and a half. We should be completed in summer of 2025. At which point we are excited to see that the project will bring a new life in the area. And we think this project will make a strong impact in the community. So with that, I just want to say thank you for your time and support, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ahmed. Any questions from the board? Okay, thanks again, Ahmed. Next up, City and County of Denver, and presenting is Chris Peterson.
Sorry, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. As you can see from the down payment assistance matrix, the use of down payment assistance did assist with 98 household purchasing homes, and that was just in 2023. So even with the high interest rates, we are making progress in getting people into permanent housing and owning their own homes. Today, we're presenting the 3 down payment assistance applications together. These applications are all under the Proposition 123 funding. And as a reminder, jurisdictions were required to opt in to Prop 123 funding by November 1st of 2023. At the bottom of each document, you will see a list of the areas eligible for this funding source and the areas that will not be eligible to participate as they did not opt in. Unfortunately, we're not in a position to give everyone the amount of funding that they requested in their application. We did take quite a bit of time to review the current amount of funding that we do have through Prop 123, and we made some decisions based on past performance of the applicants, also knowing that we have 3 additional applications for this funding being processed right now. Today, we have representatives here from the City and County of Denver, Department of Housing Stability, Douglas County Housing Partnership, and NeighborWorks of Southern Colorado to help answer any specific questions you may have. So I will open the floor to the board and see what you guys would like to know.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions from the board? Christine, it looks like you're showing us all of your existing contracts. Is this funding approval for contracts that have already been approved, or is there anything in the future that it would fund as well?
So what we're showing is contracts that we do have and a lot of our clients are using right now for down payment assistance. These applications are brand new applications and we'll be using the Prop 123 funding. The other applications are CDBG, HDG, or home, or the other contracts that we were showing the numbers for.
Thanks for confirming that. Okay, hearing no other questions, appreciate your presentation. Next up is the Douglas County Housing Partnership. And presenting is Chris Peterson.
Actually, Anthea, we presented them as a whole matrix as a whole. So since they're all very similar to each other, unless you all have direct questions for those representatives, we're hoping to approve these as a batch rather than having each organization present independently.
Okay, sorry I missed that. Then moving on to our application voting stage. I think that script has burned my brain today. Okay, since I'm recusing myself from Columbine Towers, let's go ahead and start with Columbine Towers. I'd like to ask for a motion for approval for that transaction.
So moved. This is Candace.
Thanks, Candace.
Second, this is Ladon.
Second by Ladon. Thank you. All those in favor signified by aye or hand raised.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Great. Thank you all for approving Columbine Towers. Next up, we'll do the batch of City and County of Denver, Douglas County Housing Partnership, NeighborWorks, Southern Colorado. So if I can request a motion for approval.
So moved. This is Ladon.
Thanks, Ladon. Second.
James.
Second, James, appreciate it. All those in favor signified by aye or hand raised.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, well, congratulations on the approval of that one as well. Thank you all for your patience and your time today and attendance. We look forward to our next meeting in a couple of weeks. That is the end of the State Housing Board. We can adjourn the meeting today. Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. And thank you. Beat me to it. Very important holiday.
Yeah, get some chocolate.
That's right. Some wine. Take care all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.